Hello, you're on the Reddit Reveals channel. Day 17 was the worst. That's when I started talking to myself out loud just to remember what a human voice sounded like in the apartment. I know it was day 17 because I had a tally system scratched into the back of a cereal box I kept under the sink. Every morning, I'd draw a line and pretend it didn't mean anything, that it was just a game, that I wasn't counting how long my wife had gone without saying a single word to me. 31 tallies in total. Not even a cough in my direction. Not a slammed door. Just presence. Like a mannequin programmed to microwave leftovers and walk past me like I was air. I tried everything. Asking questions. Leaving notes. Cooking her favorite disgusting soup with those weird mushrooms I hate. Once I even fake tripped just to see if she'd react. Nothing. She stepped over me. And then came the call. At 2:14 p.m., while she was folding towels in robotic silence, my phone lit up. A number I didn't recognize. I answered it on instinct. Hello? I whispered like I was the one doing something wrong. Silence. Then laughter. A man's laughter. Low, familiar. Too familiar. Wow, he said. She really hasn't told you anything, has she? I didn't breathe. She's good, he continued. Cold. I'll give her that. But you deserve to know. I figured you should hear it from me before you find the photos. Click. That's it. I turned to look at her. She had stopped folding. Still holding one towel, still facing the hallway. But her hand was shaking, and that's when I realized. She had been waiting for this call too. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I just stood there holding the phone like it was about to explode, and for a second, I thought maybe I'd imagined it all. The voice, the words, the way he laughed like he knew me better than I knew myself. But then I looked at Melody. She hadn't moved, still frozen mid-fold with that stupid beige towel in her hands. Her fingers were clenched so tightly around the fabric, I thought she might tear it in half. And that's when I saw it. Her shoulders weren't stiff from focus or habit. They were trembling, just slightly, barely noticeable. But after 31 days of watching her become a statue, I noticed. I asked her one word. Just one. Who? She didn't answer. Of course she didn't. That would have been too easy. Too normal. She just walked into the bedroom and closed the door behind her like I hadn't said anything at all. Like I wasn't standing there with my heart thudding in my ears and a million theories running wild in my head. And here's the pathetic part. I still wanted it to be a misunderstanding. I still wanted her to come out and tell me the call was a prank. That it was some old friend messing with us. That this was all just a miscommunication blown out of proportion. I would have accepted almost anything in that moment if it meant I didn't have to consider the truth I already knew deep down. But instead of answers, I got a locked door and more silence. So I did something I told myself I'd never do in a marriage. I opened her laptop. Not because I'm proud of it. Not because I wanted to be that guy. But because something inside me snapped. I had begged. I had waited. I had cooked, cleaned, cried in the bathroom like a damn teenager. And still, she couldn't even give me a word. Her laptop was on the table. No password. Just the soft glow of the screen. Like it wanted me to look. Like the whole thing had been waiting for me to finally break. There were no messages, no emails, no tabs left open with hotel bookings or secret accounts. But there was a folder on the desktop called June. Just June. Nothing else. We were in August. My hand hovered over the trackpad, heart racing. I clicked. Inside were 7 photos. That's it. 7. And the moment they opened, I stopped breathing. She was in all of them. Not smiling. Not posing. Just caught in motion, stepping into a car, standing beside a man whose face was turned away, sitting on a hotel bed fully clothed, staring at her phone with that same vacant look she'd worn around me for the past month. It wasn't explicit. It wasn't even romantic. But it felt intimate in a way I didn't have words for. And then I saw the final photo, one I took myself, 2 years ago on our anniversary. I had set the timer and held her waist in that clumsy way I always do when I try to look cool. She had cropped me out of it. Only she was left in the frame. Only her. I stared at that cropped anniversary photo for a long time. Too long. Long enough that the screen dimmed and my reflection appeared like some ghost haunting the moment. I moved the cursor again, just to make her face reappear. I needed to keep looking. Like maybe if I stared hard enough, I'd find a reason for all of it. A clue in her expression. Something that would tell me this wasn't betrayal, just confusion. A mistake. Some trauma she never shared. But there was nothing in her eyes. Just stillness. Like she was already gone, even back then. I was about to close the folder when I noticed something strange. A file had appeared below the images, one I hadn't seen when I first opened it. Maybe I missed it. Or maybe I didn't want to see it. It was an audio recording. No title, just a timestamp. June 9th, 11:42 p.m. That night, I remember, I had fallen asleep on the couch after waiting up for her. She said she was working late. I never questioned it. I clicked play before I could stop myself. There was a rustling noise first. Fabric, maybe. A pause. Then footsteps. A chair scraping across a hard floor. And then her voice. Laughing. Not the small, polite laugh she gave me when I told my dumb jokes. No, this one was real. Guttural. Like something had unlocked inside her. Then a man's voice, low and confident. You sure he's still asleep? She whispered something I couldn't make out. Then she said, louder, clearer. He wouldn't hear a grenade if it went off next to his head. More laughter. Glass clinking. Muffled sounds. A soft moan. I slammed the laptop shut. I didn't want to hear the rest. I couldn't. I already knew what came next. I sat there in the dim kitchen, the cheap ceiling fan rattling above me like it was trying to keep rhythm with my pulse. My hands were shaking. My mouth was dry. And I was still, somehow, pathetically hoping there'd be an explanation that didn't end with me being the punchline to a joke I didn't even know was being told. Then I heard the bedroom door unlock. Footsteps. Soft. Hesitant. She walked into the kitchen like nothing had changed. Like the past 31 days of silence were just a mood swing. She looked at me. Really looked at me, for the first time in weeks. And then she asked, calm as ever, did someone call you today? I didn't answer. She set her phone on the counter, turned the faucet on, washed her hands, dried them, every movement deliberate, every second dragging. Then she looked up and said, I need to tell you something, but I need you to promise not to interrupt me. I laughed, out loud. I hadn't laughed in days, not a real one, but it came out sharp, bitter, almost maniacal. She froze. Her lips parted like she might snap. But then, for the first time since this all started, her face cracked. Not anger, not guilt, panic. And I swear to God, in that moment, she looked more afraid of me than I'd ever been of losing her. She sat down across from me like we were about to negotiate a hostage release. Her fingers laced tightly in front of her like she'd rehearsed this. Like this was a script. I didn't move. I just stared at her, hoping my silence could carry the weight of everything I'd heard, everything I'd seen, everything I'd swallowed for 31 straight days while she moved through our apartment like a shadow. She opened her mouth, paused, then exhaled slowly, like someone bracing for turbulence. Before you say anything, she began, and I almost laughed again at the idea that I was the one who needed to wait my turn. I want you to understand that none of this was about you. That one line made something inside me twist. If she had slapped me across the face, it would have stung less. Then who the hell was it about? I asked. My voice cracked. I didn't care. Let her hear the desperation in it. Let her feel it in her bones the way I had. She didn't flinch. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, just slightly, and said me. I was tired of riddles. I was tired of her. But still, I asked, what happened in June? She looked down at the table, her eyes avoiding mine like they were radioactive. I messed up, she whispered. It wasn't planned. It wasn't supposed to go that far. I wanted to scream, go that far? What did that even mean? How far was too far when you record yourself with another man while your husband is asleep in the next room? She kept talking like she was reading from some self-help book about accountability. She said she felt trapped, unseen, unhappy. That last one hit the hardest. Because I had spent the last few years thinking I was doing okay. Not amazing. Not romantic comedy level. But steady. Dependable. I was the guy who fixed the leaky faucet, who bought the groceries, who remembered her dentist appointments better than my own. And now I was being told I'd become invisible. Like I'd faded from her story completely, and she'd just kept reading without me. She didn't apologize. Not directly. She didn't say his name either. When I asked who he was, she said, it's not important. He's not in the picture anymore. That made me laugh. Not the good kind. The bitter, hollow kind. The kind you hear at funerals when someone says, at least he didn't suffer. Then she said something that genuinely knocked the air out of my chest. I wasn't punishing you. I was punishing myself. I stared at her like she'd just spoken another language. She kept going, explaining how the silence, The 31 days of silence wasn't meant to hurt me, but to isolate herself, to reset, like she was some broken phone that needed to be left alone until the system figured itself out. I needed to disappear, she said softly. I stood up, because if I didn't, I would have broken something. Maybe the chair, maybe myself. You could have told me, I said. Anything. A word. A scream. A note. I know, she whispered. I begged you. I know. I thought you were sick. I thought you were depressed. I stopped. Because what I really thought, deep down, was that she was dying. That something unspeakable was eating her alive. And in a way, I guess something was. She reached for my hand. I pulled away. Not out of spite. Out of instinct. Like touching her would make it real. I'm still your wife, she said, like it was supposed to mean something. Like that title still carried weight after being dragged through whatever emotional slaughterhouse she'd locked me inside. No, I finally said. You're someone else. Someone I don't know. And honestly, I'm scared to find out who. She didn't argue. She just nodded. As if she agreed. As if she'd already grieved me. The silence that followed was different now. It wasn't heavy like before. It was sharp. Weaponized. She stayed seated, her hands folded in her lap like a student waiting to be scolded. But there was no apology coming. Not really. There never had been. What she gave me instead was a kind of controlled vulnerability, as if she'd spent the whole month preparing for this exact scene. The tears, the confession, the performance. She asked if we could talk, as if we hadn't already wasted 31 days not doing that very thing. But I nodded. I wanted to hear it. Not because I needed closure. I had no illusions left about that. But because I wanted to know how she'd twist the story, how she'd shape it in a way that made sense to her. To them. She started with a sentence so rehearsed, so precisely chosen, I nearly interrupted out of sheer disgust. It didn't mean anything. Of course. The anthem of cowards. The soft pillow for guilt. She said they met at a friend's party. I hadn't even known she'd gone to a party. She claimed it was last minute, something she didn't even plan to attend. I wasn't even supposed to be there, she kept saying, as if that mattered. As if affairs were accidents that happened to people like bad weather. He listened to me, she said. He noticed things. I didn't speak, just nodded slowly and locked my jaw to keep from saying what I really wanted to. I wanted to scream that I listened. That I noticed too, in my own way. That I remembered every appointment, every allergy, every brand of tea she liked when she had cramps. That I paid attention to the things she never said. But I didn't. Because what would it change? You can't argue with someone who's rewritten their past while you were still living in it. She went on. She said it started emotionally. We talked. A lot. For hours sometimes. At first I didn't even think of it as cheating. She said he understood her. That she felt seen. It was laughable, really. After months of her walking past me like I was furniture, now I was being told she just wanted to be seen. I leaned forward. Not out of empathy. Out of curiosity. I wanted to see how far she'd go. So why record it? I asked quietly. That caught her off guard. She blinked. What? The audio, I said. June 9th. At 11:42. You were laughing. With him. While I was asleep 2 rooms away. Color drained from her face, and I felt nothing. Not triumph. Not rage. Just the hollow click of confirmation. She covered her mouth with one hand like that might somehow stop the memory from spilling out. I didn't know he recorded that. The way she said it. Like that was the problem. The recording. Not the betrayal. Not the hiding. Just the fact that there was evidence. That's what bothers you. I asked. That there's proof. She opened her mouth. Closed it. Her hands started to shake again. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then she said it. The sentence that shifted everything. I was going to tell you. That night. But when I saw you sleeping, I couldn't. I stared at her. Because you felt guilty? I asked. She shook her head. No. Because you looked so peaceful. And I knew once I said it, that version of you would be gone. And that's when I understood something I hadn't before. She didn't just cheat. She studied me. Calculated the cost. Delayed the pain, not out of mercy, but preservation. She didn't want to lose the version of me who still believed in her. So she kept me frozen. In silence. In hope. Because as long as she said nothing, I might still love her. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed beside her, eyes wide open, watching the faint glow of the digital clock paint numbers onto the ceiling like warnings. She turned toward the wall. Not away from me, toward something safe. Something blank. I could hear her breathing, slow, and controlled, like she was forcing herself to sound normal, like she thought I might change my mind and forgive her if she exhaled in just the right rhythm. But I didn't move, didn't speak, just stared at the ceiling and imagined all the ways people break. The next morning, she made coffee. 2 cups, just like always. She slid mine across the table, careful not to let her fingers touch the ceramic too long, as if heat might betray guilt. I didn't touch it. I let it sit there, cooling in silence, like some symbol she didn't know how to interpret. She asked me what I wanted to do. About us. About this. And for the first time since it all began, I didn't answer. Not out of shock, or fear, or paralysis, but because I wanted her to feel what I felt. The echo, the guessing, the space between sound and meaning. She stared at me across the table. Say something, she whispered. But I just blinked. Let the silence build. She thought I was deciding. I wasn't. I already had. I wanted to destroy her. Not in a dramatic, movie-worthy way. I didn't want to scream or throw her things off the balcony. I didn't want revenge in the obvious sense. No, I wanted her to rot slowly inside her own choices. I wanted to become a mirror she couldn't avoid. I wanted to haunt her with quiet. So I played along. I said we could take it slow. That maybe we needed time to rebuild. That maybe couples therapy wasn't such a terrible idea. And when she cried, not from joy, but from sheer relief, I held her hand across the table and smiled like the biggest idiot in the world. But inside, something new was growing. Not rage, not bitterness. Something colder, more surgical. I began to study her. Like a case file. I watched the way her jaw tightened when she lied. The way she blinked too much when she spoke in half-truths. I noted what words she avoided, what questions she never asked me. And then I did something I hadn't done in years. I logged into my old social media account, the one I hadn't touched since before we got married. I scrolled through messages, old friends, people I hadn't thought about in a decade. Not because I missed them, but because I was looking for something she couldn't predict. A crack in the version of me she thought she understood. And that's when I found her. Not Melody. Her. The woman who called me. I recognized the profile picture immediately. A blurry shot of a wine glass on a marble countertop. But the name, it was fake. An alias. Something quickly made, probably deleted by now. But I remembered the voice. I searched through every trace she left behind. The timestamp of the call, the city code, the language in her message. She wasn't some scorned woman. She wasn't warning me out of sisterhood or pity. She was warning me because Melody had done this before. I knew better than to ask Melody directly. If I confronted her, she'd retreat, fold into that detached, blank-faced version of herself, and start feeding me lines about privacy and the past not matching. But the voice on the phone, the one that cracked this whole thing open, wasn't just some outsider. She was involved. Somehow. And I needed to know how deep this rabbit hole really went. So I played it cool. I kissed Melody on the forehead when I left for work, like nothing was wrong. Like I wasn't spending every spare second tracking down breadcrumbs left by the ghost of her previous life. I wasn't good at this, at scheming, at lying. But fury has a way of making even the most pathetic men strategic. I started reaching out to old acquaintances. People she'd quietly cut ties with when we got married. A former coworker. An ex-roommate she'd claimed moved away. Even her estranged cousin who once showed up at a Thanksgiving dinner and never came back. What I found wasn't shocking. It was confirming. This wasn't her first time going silent. It wasn't even her second. I learned about a man named Derek. Someone she dated before me. Serious, long-term, almost engaged. He vanished one day, stopped showing up at work, deleted all social media. His friends assumed he had a breakdown. But her cousin? She knew the truth. Melody went dark on him too. For weeks. Wouldn't answer calls. Wouldn't leave the house. He kept showing up at her place, begging to know what he did wrong. One night, she finally let him in, served him tea, told him everything was fine. They even slept together that night. And the next morning, she was gone. Left town. Moved in with a friend 3 states over. Never told Derek. Never answered him again. The cousin told me she only found out because Melody called her 2 years later, out of the blue, asking for a reference for a job in a new city. She acted like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't disappeared from a man's life without a single word. She does this when she's bored. The cousin had said over the phone, her voice hard, flat. She wants to see how much damage she can cause without lifting a finger. I sat in my car after that call, fingers clenched so hard around the steering wheel my knuckles turned white. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even hurt anymore. I was fascinated. It wasn't about sex, or loneliness, or even unhappiness. Melody was engineering exits, designing emotional collapses like they were architecture. Slow erosion disguised as confusion, then a sharp cut, a disappearance, a rebirth. And I was just her latest project. That night, I asked her to dinner. Somewhere nice. Fancy. A place we hadn't been in years. She lit up, mascara, lipstick, heels. She looked like a woman desperate to believe the nightmare was over. I held her hand across the candlelit table and asked her what she wanted to do about us. She said she wanted to rebuild, that she'd learned from her mistakes. And then she said something that almost made me lose it right there in the middle of the restaurant. I'm not that person anymore. I smiled. Tight. Silent. Because now I wasn't thinking about healing. I was thinking about how I'd end this story, and how I'd make her feel every second of it. I planned it all out. Every detail. Not dramatic revenge, not chaos. Just enough of a crack in her image to make her feel what I'd felt. Powerless, confused, small. I started writing everything down. The audio, the timeline, the names, the call. Not to use against her publicly. No, I wasn't interested in explosions. I wanted precision. A letter. Just one. With nothing but the truth. A timeline of silence. A mirror. But as I wrote it, something strange happened. The more I remembered, the less I wanted to carry it all. Not because she didn't deserve to feel it, but because I didn't want to hold it anymore. The silence, the ache, the obsession with what she had done. I looked at the woman sitting across from me each night, not broken, not whole, and realized I wasn't afraid of losing her. I was afraid of losing myself. So I didn't leave a letter. I left the house. Voluntarily. Calmly. I took a bag, a sweater, my car keys. Told her I needed air. She looked at me like she knew something had shifted, but she didn't ask questions. Maybe she thought I'd be back in an hour. Or a day? But I wasn't. I drove 6 hours to the lake where I used to fish with my dad. No signal. No noise. Just birds, cold wind, and silence. The real kind. Not the weaponized version she used. The peaceful kind. And I sat. For hours. And for the first time in months, I didn't think about her. I thought about myself. About who I used to be. About the parts of me that had been slowly erased while I was too busy holding on to someone who'd already let go. And I made a choice. Not to get back at her. Not to expose her. But to forgive her. Not for her sake. For mine. Because revenge would keep me tethered to the worst version of her. Forgiveness would let me rebuild the best version of myself. A few weeks later, I moved into a new apartment. Small. Cheap. Quiet. I painted the walls blue. I started therapy. I adopted a cat I named Juniper. She bites. I kind of love it. Melody texted a few times. Sure things. Hope you're okay. Thinking about you. I never replied. Not because I hate her, but because I've already had that conversation. With myself. And for once, that was enough.